Hi, everybody. This is Tony Zampiello with the Main San Gabriel Basin Watermaster. We're getting ready to kick off our Instagram Live today. We're waiting for to find our host so she can join. And I think we just found her. But in the meantime, I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk a little bit about today. We're very lucky today to have a state official who really has a background in all of these issues we've been talking to you about since the water year has just turned over. We thought it'd be nice to have her. Her name is Lisa Lien-Mager. She's a senior advisor at communications for the California Natural Resources Agency. Anyway, what we're going to talk to you about today is we're going to ask her some questions about what's going on in the state. I'm going to give you a brief update as to where we are locally, and then she's going to give us some outlook as to where the state is, what's happened since we had a good amount of rain over the weekend. We know that didn't get us out of trouble, but it may have helped. So we're going to get her opinion on that. And then I'm going to talk to her a little bit based on one of her experiences is, she started her career actually as a reporter, but for 5 years, she was the director of communications for ACWA. And ACWA is an agency, it's the Association of California Water Agencies. We've been very active in ACWA over the years. I gave a little bit of your background, and we're really going to focus on three things today, if you can hear us.
Yep.
If you could talk to us just briefly about what your agency does, where you fit in that agency, how you interact with the governor's office, and then I think we're going to lead into a little bit of discussion of the recent drought declaration by the governor. And then we're going to ask you a little bit about where the state project stands and whether last weekend's event is really an atmospheric river. And then I'm going to encourage people to keep asking questions, and I'll feed you questions as we go along. So I know that was a lot, but maybe.
Sure. I'll jump in, and hopefully you can hear me. Sorry, we were having difficulties, but
No, we hear you.
I'm with the Natural Resources Agency, Tony, thank you. And it's my privilege to work here on communications. Our agency's portfolio includes all things natural resources. So Department of Water Resources, Fish and Wildlife, CAL FIRE, Parks, Energy Commission, you name it. I'm leaving out a couple right now, but it's it's really one of the better places, I think, to have a vantage point on what's happening in California and natural resources. So here we are again in a drought. The last 2 water years were together the driest on record now. So, and interestingly, what we are seeing now in this 3rd year of drought is sort of the impacts that in the past we might have seen in the 4th or 5th year. So definitely seeing accelerated impacts as a result of climate change. And just, kind of a side note, what happened this spring, we had pretty, okay snowpack up in the mountains, but in about the April timeframe, the projected runoff just never materialized, never made it into our reservoirs. So that was a little bit of an unprecedented situation, just given the super dry soils that we've had and the extreme temperatures that we had. So all of that's saying to us that climate change is happening. It's happening a little, the impacts are happening a little more quickly than we have been able to sort of adapt and sort of change the way we're modeling and predicting things. So here we are, those of us in the water biz, as you are, Tony, and others that are watching, we're not new to drought. We've been to this rodeo before, but now we're just seeing the impacts happening a little more quickly. So we did have some excellent storms over the weekend. We were so pleased to see that storm door open up, and we did get some very, very welcome rains. We're starting to see runoff arriving in some of the reservoirs. I think Oroville so far is up 15 feet and counting, which is huge. And they're actually able to, from the State Water Project, put some more water into San Luis for storage right now because that runoff is there. But not really enough to get us out of this drought. I think I've heard Department of Water Resources folks say we'd probably need 7 or 8 more big storms like this to really overcome the deficit that we have for from the precip deficit and then just the soils. But we're encouraged that this happened. But make no mistake, I mean, we just know that droughts are going to be part of our future going forward, no matter what, and even a little more severe now, given the effects of climate change. So that was kind of a lot. Do you want me to pause for a sec, or how do you want to go?
Yeah, we're still letting folks come on, and we don't have any questions from the outside. But one of the questions I had for you is that, you know, do you think there's this term that I think is relatively new? It's called an atmospheric river. You know, when I was starting out in the business and had black curly hair, we just called them really big winter storms. Do you think that maybe the top of the state caught part of what could be considered a atmospheric river, or you know, this event seemed to come on fairly quick, and so one advantage that we have, and one of the advantages that we joke about in the basin, is yes, water levels are down, but that means we have a lot of room for storage. Obviously, I heard at one point there was up to, I think, 35 or 38 CFS with 38,000 CFS. That was a huge number that ran into one of the reservoirs. We'd obviously like it spread out more, but it sounds like we were able to capture a lot of water, and there's still some runoff happening.
That's right. Yeah, it definitely was an atmospheric river. And I think going into it, some of National Weather Service and others had predicted this a category 5. They actually have, a continuum that they measure the strength of these things. And so it was super welcome. And our understanding of how atmospheric rivers work is actually really evolving quickly. And Department of Water Resources is working really closely with National Weather Service, as I said, NOAA Fisheries, others, to really, sort of understand and also really up our game with respect to modeling and predicting these kinds of storms. So we're really trying to move toward a place where we can, in real time, anticipate the kind of runoff we'll see, and then maybe even operate our reservoirs accordingly, given that we have a new normal with how precipitation falls these days. So yeah, definitely pleased to see that, and we are, increasing our understanding of how this all works. And yeah, we can see on our rivers here in the valley that there's additional water coming in.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing, Lisa, is that how do you interact with the governor's office? It was sometimes we don't have the best timing in the water business. The governor declared a drought. Then we had this storm. During that period of time, what is the agency's role in talking to the governor? And did you have any input in how this new drought declaration was put in place?
Yeah, so I think we really have been taking pretty much a strategic and regional approach on this drought. Going back to April, if you'll recall, when I talked about that, just sort of realization that a lot of that runoff wasn't coming into our reservoirs. We were sort of on alert that we may be looking at a very different kind of runoff scenario than we had originally thought, given the snowpack that was there. But even prior to that, the governor had tasked our agency, as well as several other sister agencies, with getting our arms around what may be, an extended drought. So we had already been sort of in the planning phases, but what we really did earlier this spring was take a look at where the runoff situation was going to be most acute, and then focus that emergency kind of declaration on those areas. So you saw that first in Mendocino, Sonoma counties there on the Russian River watershed, where it was quite acute. And they were already moving into, very significant levels of conservation, knowing what they were looking at. And then our approach was, though, really just to sort of watch and monitor conditions, and then extend that emergency proclamation where needed, because a lot of things come along with that emergency proclamation in terms of being able to expedite projects, where you need to be moving equipment and acquiring equipment, and we wanted to make sure we were doing that. Now then, in July, we extended it to more counties, with that approach in mind. And then just in October, as you referenced, the governor did expand the proclamation to, the entire state, just given that that's where we felt like we needed to be to allow folks to prepare and waive contracting where needed so we could move quickly. But also as part of that proclamation, though, the governor did redouble his request for Californians to conserve. Back in July, he had asked all Californians to kind of do their part and take simple action to reduce their water use by 15%. And then also, though, wanted to, in October, signal to local water agencies that it's time to really activate your drought contingency plans or your water shortage contingency plans at the level that you need to prepare for a third dry year. So it was kind of, I think, incremental regional approach that we've been taking so far, and really want to stress that we are viewing this as a partnership with the local water agencies. We know that, the water agencies that are part of Aqua, the Infesterones, all of them just have done a terrific job in the past and really are the ones who know their local areas the best and know exactly, sort of what actions they should be taking at what time. So we really want to recognize that. And the governor's been clear about that too, that we haven't felt the need to do a top-down mandatory one-size-fits-all approach at this point. We are really wanting to lean in and support the locals where it's already very acute. We see that they are moving to mandatory conservation. Others are ramping up as we go. So that's exactly the approach that we want to see, and we appreciate the leadership at the local level.
So we did have one of the people on with us today, Kathy_Rob, was asking, and you may have covered this, but if that atmospheric river was a 5, what is the total scale? Is it 1 to 10? Is it still being developed?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think a 5 is pretty darn good. I would have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure what that is.
You guys saw 5 or 7 inches in 24 hours or 48 hours. I mean, up north, it was really a high amount. The other question that Erica J is asking is, how people can contribute as homeowners or customers to this 15% reduction.
Oh, that's a great question. And really, there's a lot of resources out there. At the state level, we have SaveOurWater.com, which is an umbrella conservation messaging program that has been around really for a decade. And during the last drought was super effective at reaching Californians. So we have reactivated that, all new creative, and really in partnership with local water agencies, we're trying to get a lot of simple, clear messages out there on what folks can do. And so definitely, we know in a lot of areas in California, up to half of our residential water use takes place outdoors for outdoor irrigation. So that's a very, very, very big target for folks to take some easy steps now. For example, we just had rain. We're telling folks, make sure you don't turn your sprinklers on for some time. Let Mother Nature do its job there. And, and certainly even without the rain, we know that folks can cut back on the amount of outdoor watering they're doing, and that will really deliver some savings. The other big thing is, of course, fixing leaks, making sure that you are switching to efficient appliances where you can. And there, I would just plug, your local water supplier. I mean, they have done tremendous work since the last drought to really provide resources for customers. Many water agencies have like a home audit or, WaterWise landscape tour that you can have your water agency come out and help you do, simple things to save water outdoors and indoors. So really tons of things that folks can do, and now's the time to be doing it.
Great. Well, we did have H2O Blossom said that they read an article that the atmospheric rivers were 1 to 5. So 5 was top of the scale. So if you look through the discussion too, there are also people that are putting up websites. I believe it's SaveOurWater.com can help you with some of those insights. So let's see. Wow, H2O Blossom. We should have had them as a third guest because they know exactly how all this was developed. So it was actually an interesting that the director of the Center for Western Water developed it. And for those of you that want to look at the feed, there's a big discussion about that. We really want to thank you for that. Now I'm gonna try and hone in a little bit for us. We are 80% groundwater. The way our judgment works in our basin for the San Gabriel Valley is that we make up the difference with imported water, and because it's high quality in the sense of low in salts, we've historically put state project water into our basin for replenishment. This campaign that started all of this and these talks and everything on our website, the Waters That Connect Us, actually was really a part of a frustration of us here in Southern California, not necessarily with the state or the governor or even the elected folks, but really it was because our local news, when things would look great in Northern California, they would say to us here, like on I don't want to put any of the channels on spot because they'll come after me, but they would say the drought's over because we've got plenty of water up in the Delta. There's plenty of water on the state project. But in reality, we still recover as a groundwater basin during those in-between years, and we're trying to make up. I'm curious because I know I'm familiar with your name and all of your work from Aqua. You know the diversity of agencies. Is there ever a lot of discussion up in Sacramento about how do we try to make some kind of uniform message that makes sense or people can apply throughout the state? I mean, is it really a focus on what's happening with the Delta and moving water south, or is there a bigger picture too that's discussed and maybe a concern of the governor's office? Now, I don't want you to get in trouble, but I'm just curious.
No, there's a lot of discussion around that topic. I mean, we definitely recognize that there's a lot of diversity around the state, and the hydrology, the local conditions, the water supply mix is very different, whether you're in, Humboldt County or in Imperial County. Like, it's very different. So I think the approach that we've been taking with the Newsom administration is to develop our water resilience portfolio. If you've had a chance to look at that, that was our attempt to really to think through what are the actions that we're going to need to build resilience into the future. And we really kind of segmented that out between like regional profiles, what is the logical things that regions can be doing, local suppliers, and then even broader as a region to develop and build resilience. And then what as a state would we do that could then support that, whether it's technical assistance, funding assistance, that kind of thing. So we have been very mindful that there's a huge role that local water agencies are already playing. I mean, the majority of the investment in our water infrastructure, both water and sewer, is at the local level. Your boards and others that have made these decisions, and the ratepayers that thankfully approve bond measures and things to keep these projects going. That's the huge, really backbone. But as the state, we see that there's a role too for us to support and provide that technical assistance and, just kind of keep pushing the envelope where we can and really see it as a partnership. So I think you'll see that there's often, a tension between not wanting to do a one size fits all because we recognize there's such variety, but sometimes there are sort of like, landmark standards that come into place, like the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, for example, that passed at the height of the last drought in 2014 that we are now implementing. So again, the state is trying to move into a role where we can be providing assistance for folks. There's a lot of grant funding that's going out the door right now for building drought and water resilience. So we're just hoping to continue in that vein and really continue that partnership with the local water agencies to provide, play our role where we are as the state, but also be supporting what the locals are doing and all the good work that's happening.
Well, I really appreciate you being a good sport, because I've kind of gone off script, and I'm known for not following scripts. So in that vein, one of the challenges for us, I've been in the business for over, close to 40 years, really. And one of the toughest challenges is always the balance between the water for urban use, reducing stress on the Delta, but then also having enough water available for different species, fish and other wildlife. Describe to us a little bit what your life is like trying to, I saw all the departments. I think there are almost 30 different departments in your agency. So I'm sure your staff meetings must be a lot of fun, but describe a little bit what, and you've worked for Aqua, so you know the folks, the pressures on people that are trying to supply a growing population. Give us a little insight into what your day, your life is when you're trying to balance all of those things.
Well, it is indeed a balancing act, and we do find ourselves sometimes careening from one, kind of emergency situation or crisis to another. I wish we sometimes had more time to be in that proactive space and really setting out, and well, we have put out great plans, but then actually being able to implement. Sometimes it gets a little tricky for us because we'll have, wildfires or, in this case, big drought. Sometimes there have been energy grid issues that have really risen to the forefront that we have to address. But I think at the end of the day, our departments do a good job of prioritizing and balancing, because as you said, it really comes down to how we can best use our resources in ways that protect the environment, but also, support our economy and meet the needs for public health and safety. And it's going to get harder in the future. Just candidly, I mean, we all know that what we're seeing is, changes in our hydrology. We're going to have more severe droughts. At the same time, we might have more severe flooding. We're going to have to be updating our infrastructure and, really making sure we're doubling down on water use efficiency where we can. But we also need to pay attention to the biodiversity and the ecosystem. That's another priority that this administration has been really advancing, is to make sure that we're not waiting to the point where species are getting listed. That's like the emergency room visit. We're trying to avoid that and really think about how we can take actions, how we can be funding and advancing projects that have multiple benefits, where say it might shore up a water supply or provide a levee for flood protection, but it also can create an enhanced ecosystem or benefit biodiversity, because really that's so critical for our future. If we lose our biodiversity, we are a biodiversity hotspot, and if we are to lose that into the future, it will have a lot of implications, including for agriculture, including for our forests and our watersheds. So, I mean, I think we just kind of wake up every day thinking about the balancing act that we're doing. And sometimes whatever's on fire that day gets the most attention in that moment. But I think we don't lose sight of the big picture. We try not to anyway, that it's all very integrated and we need an integrated approach. And luckily we have some really excellent leaders in our departments and at our agency and across the state government, really, that really have their eye on the ball every day.
Well, and then add to that, the one of the most recent topics in recent years is disadvantaged communities. And then on top of that, down here, because the way we operate the San Gabriel River, we're big fans of surface storage. And I know there are challenges to that too. But when we look at, it's just so much easier to manage recharge of groundwater when you have surface reservoirs, that you can do it in an orderly and gradual metered manner. So really, I know you're super busy. I know that we had to reset this. I can't thank you enough for joining us, but I love this stuff. I could talk to you about it for hours. I know you've got stuff to do, but is there any kind of a closing thought or anything that you think that I didn't cover?
Well, no, I just would thank you for reaching out. I'm happy to join the conversation anytime. Like you, I love this stuff and, live and breathe it. And I personally can't wait till we can all be back doing stuff in person. We have been doing okay with Zooms and virtual meetings, but I'm really looking forward to getting back to seeing folks in person. And I forgot to say at the beginning, but I'm actually standing on the living roof of our new resources building in Sacramento. This building was started about 5 years ago, and it's now completed this summer, ready for occupancy. We're still kind of in hybrid mode with the state workforce, so not a lot of folks are working here every day, but it's a pretty great view. I'm looking to the west back here. You might be able to see the Sacramento River, and I could maybe show you if it's not into the sun too much. It's a living roof, so we are really capturing runoff, and we have native plants, and it actually creates a really beautiful space, and it reminds us every day that this is what we live for, right, is the natural resources like this and how to steward them.
Well, it's really cool when you fly into Sacramento Airport, you see the river and the delta meandering through there. It really tells you that that's really the life's blood of our state. Now, hopefully, within a week or so, there'll be more rain, and what we're really hoping is we'll have you back after the first of the year, and you're going to tell us you have so much water you don't know what to do with it.
Well, that would be great. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I didn't know I
No,
was frozen.
no problem. I'm sure if it's not my fault, I'll get blamed for it. But we really enjoyed the discussion today. I want to remind everybody that you can always contact us later with questions if you have them. The whole intent of these Instagram lives are to kind of spur everybody's thinking, tell our story a little bit, but also be able to expand into how we are just one piece of the puzzle statewide. And then when you talk about things like natural resources, we're talking on a countrywide or federal level. So it's very complex, all these things. And honestly, Lisa, I don't know how you do it, but it's great that you were able to join us today. Now, I want to remind everybody, we're going to be doing these once a month, at least out through the holidays and into the new year. Hopefully the news will continue to get better with regards to the drought. And don't forget to check our website, www.thewatersthatconnectus.com. And that will tell you about this whole campaign we're trying to do, where we're trying to educate people on exactly where their water comes from. And of course, our light just came back on. So everything that could go wrong today has. Again, Lisa, thank you very much. We'll let you go eat lunch. And thanks everybody for joining. And again, if you want friends to join us, you need to follow us at MSGB Watermaster on Instagram. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks again, Lisa. Bye-bye.
Bye.